ended up losing like probably $30,000 and 6 months of our time. The reason is that we built the perfect product for a user, understood their needs, but we didn't have any distribution. Pay a product manager like a salesperson. They're like, what the hell? I don't understand that. Like, I think when product managers are now driving revenue and like they're responsible for increasing the usage of the product, if you're maximizing that, I think you should get a piece of that pie.
For the first time in history, you don't end up having this very passive dashboards, which, especially if you're a disruptive startup founder, you have to pay thousands of dollars a month from an agency or consultant to just interpret to tell you what the hell you have to act on, right? So that's a really cool thing that's emerging, and we really hope in the next few months that gets fully validated as like the ultimate champion.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My guest today is Tom Capone. Tom is the co-founder and CEO of Lens AI, the AI growth agent for scaling disruptive products from 0 to 1 million users. Also, Tom's the founder of Lens Suite, a six-figure agency that's driven $54 million in revenue for L'Oreal, Uber Eats, and TripAdvisor. And I'm Hirsch, the founder of Focus Bets. We're a product revenue studio for SaaS startups. Focus Bets helps founders grow from seed to Series A by monetizing their existing customer base and de-risking new product lines. Today, we're talking about growth, AI, and monetizing users post-product market fit. Stay tuned. So what I liked about our discussion earlier is we were breaking down this whole concept of the 90% pre-order launch, which I thought was interesting because we're talking about software, AI software, and not a new merch drop from a shoe brand.
Yeah.
So tell me about the thinking behind that, because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so the thinking is very much like an e-commerce where you do a lot of wait lists, especially if it's like a disruptive product who's coming into an industry. You want like people to kind of get added to the wait list and basically like to validate that demand for your product is something you can replicate in software. You can essentially just say, we're about to ship the product in like 3 to 6 months. Like in the meantime, get this exclusive discount on this pre-order offer, and essentially you kind of get in on more benefits or more features on that product for a lower price, but you receive the product in like 3 to 6 months. So I think that's ultimately like it's a distribution first approach. It's basically saying, let me put this idea out into the world and then let's actually see how these guys respond and whether they're interested or not. And then once you validate, then you go and build a product, and then you go and focus on delivery and obviously making sure the expectations are met, because otherwise your brand can collapses on behalf of that reputation, right? So that's kind of the approach, because obviously there's these very complicated problems you have to go and solve, but you first have to understand they're worth solving, essentially.
Yeah, like if there's really demand here or not, how would people pay? And then I suppose they're also looking at maybe like their onboarding behavior, and there are different stages of the customer journey. But I was wondering as well, like, I guess, are you looking at people like Cluely and these other big brands that are trying to go distribution first? And then how is that playing into your fundraising strategy as well?
Yeah, so what they're doing is crazy, by the way. Yeah, if they're amazing, like the Roy Lee, their CEO is like spot on. I think what he's saying in regards to a lot of other companies in software, especially, starting to take the distribution first approach, like that's completely correct, because there's so much to build with AI at the moment. Like the possibilities are endless from product standpoint. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you've built a really amazing thing, but people aren't rallying up to buy it, or like aren't rallying up to even advocate for that product that you built. Like you just don't want to be in that spot. So I think what they're saying is 100% correct. Is unlike past 10 years where you're like, let me be very product focused in that sense, like, making sure the product is sticky, which by the way, you still need to do to some extent. But now what companies like Cluely and these other guys are doing is they're starting on the base principle that if you get 1 billion views a month, like it's impossible to not convert at 0.0001% of that. So that is basically on that thesis, they just market the shit out of their product, but they kind of get the distribution ticked off.
I do agree. I think like the product stickiness is something that product teams, that you earn the right to do as a startup founder. And I've been there before. We made a mistake when we kind of ended up losing like probably $30,000 and 6 months of our time. And so we ended up having, like the perfect user experience that solved the need, but no one using it. So yeah, I really think it's so important to do that distribution first. And one more thing I'll add to that is like it is a new play, but it's also an old play. So for example, like Facebook trying to grow to billions of users before they started monetizing.
Yeah.
If you can get that much people on the platform, you start to learn and let the data tell you why people buy and why they don't buy. And then therefore you can start to actually become good at product on the basis of that versus just using your intuition.
I think it's a prioritization issue. Like, you got to worry about just getting people through the door and understanding that what makes them tick and want to go through that door before you start understanding what is it that keeps them inside the house, and that kind of thing, I think is crucial. What I was saying in regards to like this approach which you're kind of taking from ecom and info and bringing into software is around the marketing aspect primarily. In e-commerce especially, you have these funnels which are very much based on running ads on Meta, Google, TikTok ads platforms primarily, and then basically like funneling them into very irresistible offer. Okay, and I don't think that's being exploited enough in software, which is something like we'll get into, but like we're kind of doing with Lens AI is basically forming an irresistible offer, and basically just architecting a funnel which gets people through the door via a specific growth channel, whether that's pay-per-click, so ads, or whether that's influencer marketing or content, community marketing, email marketing, or whatever that might be. Just
Are you guys testing out these various channels, or how are you thinking about that?
yeah, so actually the cool thing about what we're doing with Lens AI is that these channels are like automating these channels with AI is what our product is about. So if we manage to basically get this campaign to succeed on Lens AI and get to 100K users as fast as possible within 12 months, then that means we're automatically validating our product, because we're basically like launching and scaling this campaign via our product, via our AI growth agents, which run these growth channels, these pay-per-click, SEO, email marketing. So right now, the types of tasks they're automating are basically like running AI ads, AI video and static ads on repeat on Google, Meta, TikTok. So that they're basically just like creating market research document around trends, audience, and then we need to target, then translating that into actual ads. And obviously competitor analysis, that's super important. Then once that gets converted into a series of ads, they automatically upload them on Meta or Google or these kind of platforms, and then iterate off the back of that. So they have access to the data coming in from Meta, from Google, and then in real time they tell you, hey, we uploaded this ad which is converting 15% less. We should iterate this very specific thing because we see that click-through rate is down at this current moment. The capacity of AI to read data from like analytics dashboard like a consultant would is like getting there. So for the first time in history, you don't end up having this very passive dashboards, which, especially if you're a disruptive startup founder, you have to pay thousands of dollars a month from an agency or consultant to just interpret to tell you what the hell you have to act on, right? So that's a really cool thing that's emerging, and we really hope in the next few months that gets fully validated as like the ultimate champion for Lens AI, because if we manage to succeed in our goal with using our product, then automatically other brands can use it to scale from 0 to 1 million users.
That makes sense. I like it, like the dog fooding approach and letting your own results speak for themselves. Good for investors and also for some of the templates that you had said that the customers will be able to use. So you talked about the pre-order model, and then I think it was like a nurturing campaign that so users can come in and join the community, and before the product is ready, they're learning from other users and learning from best practices, like best growth practices shipped at Dropbox and like Airtable, etc. I thought that was quite an interesting way to give value to users. Can you tell me more about that?
So like the offer we're running, like I'll just state it in a very transparent and kind of easy way to understand. It's just like, it's basically we're taking the most expensive license on our base plan, on plans which gives you the most amount of tokens, that's $1,000 a year, and we're putting it down to $100 for this pre-order. So it's a 90% off. With that comes kind of a chicken and egg problem where it's a pre-order. So you'll be receiving the product in 3 to 6 months. So in the meantime, we need to somehow, let you into our ecosystem and start benefiting from what Lens AI can provide. And on the other side, you obviously need to have enough trust in us to then kind of, receive the product in 6 months' time and then open your account, load it up with tokens and start growing your product to 1 million users. In the meantime, which is what you're saying, we basically have to put community first. We have to treat it like very much like products in creator economy or info products like treat it, which is you purchase this offer, you get access to our inner circle, our community, which solves this specific micro niche problem, which in this case is getting from 0 to 1 million users on products. And we give you all the information, all the hacks, all the best practices, the AI workflows, which are super important nowadays because you can automate a lot of menial tasks through. And yeah, so essentially in our community, what you find is monthly Q&A calls with like experts from, who've scaled L'Oreal, Uber Eats, TripAdvisor, etc. Then the other thing which we're really nailing down on is this community campaigns thing, which is what you just mentioned, which is essentially you get access to current users of ours who are scaling with Lens AI and basically very transparently give out the information as to what strategy they use and as to what they did to reach the 3x ROAS or the 10x ROAS on their campaign. So that's a really cool thing because for the first time, again, company growth is like a very reserved private thing. And I feel like it's a piece of IP which hasn't been kind of exploited yet, keeping that information private so that startups, can't see it if you want to grow in your industry. To what benefit? Because you have to kind of push for disruptive companies making new products and help them out in some way. So that's what we're doing is, this community campaigns thing. Basically, if you're a new company in biotech and there's a big company in biotech who's scaling campaigns like crazy, then you can basically get knowledge as to what growth channels they're using. Are they SEOing the shit out of their campaigns? Or are they doing a lot of influencer campaigns? If so, with who, with what kind of micro influencers are they aiming for, pages, or like all of this kind of stuff.
But yeah, like the nitty-gritty details there.
Yeah, and you can basically clone it on your software and kind of fast track your campaign because you have information from top industry companies in your field.
And I think I was talking about that too. I liked the cloning aspect because what it's telling me is it's like a template. It's like how Webflow grew. Like they had a bunch of free templates available, well, free and paid, like so you can instantly spin up the design of your website in like a few clicks. And it sounds like that you're taking a similar approach, basically.
Yeah, so I'll give a bit of background on what I've been doing for the past 5 years. So I've launched a digital marketing agency in London. It's called Lens Suite. And that's basically what prompted us to start Lens AI, is essentially working with a lot of medium to large enterprise clients. And basically, we managed to help the luck of working with like L'Oreal, Uber Eats, TripAdvisor, like, and lots of the other B2C companies as well as a few B2B. And what we saw was that obviously they don't have money with like, injecting capital to kind of experiment and find out the answer around what growth channel works for their new product. But that's not the case for obviously like disruptive startup founders who are like, who got these crazy product ideas, which, running an agency, like you kind of find out about, and because people like, I've got this, new personal luxury jet which can park in your garage and like it's just 2-seater and you can fly over.
Is this an actual idea, by the way?
That's an actual product one founder is like trying to build. So it's kind of, you got this crazy stuff saying like, I'm kind of a bit of like a futurist myself, so I'm really fascinated by these guys with like amazing ideas. Yeah, it's just a shame that they haven't got the capital initially, or like the knowledge, the knowledge on how to distribute digitally to make these ideas pop and really go viral and start distributing to hundreds of thousands, millions of users.
Yeah, because they have that innovator's mindset, which is a bit different than like the growth marketer mindset needed to take it off the ground.
Yeah, and at that point, that they're kind of asking you, you have an agency, you've scaled a bunch of great campaigns. Is it possible for us to work together? And then, you find out about the capital side, and obviously we're not running a nonprofit. So you kind of have to say, all right, but, there must be a software solution which can help them for me, what I want to find out is, current marketing softwares are very outdated, very complicated. You have to hire a consultant lots of the time who just sit to tell you how to use the software.
Okay.
So it's like, it's got so many features inside, like this billion dashboard and things that a product founder, like a startup founder, he's not gonna know where to go to basically like distribute his product. So there must be a simple solution out there. From what I saw, there wasn't something like the equivalent of vibe coding, observable like in the vibe growth, what we call it. There wasn't that, and we started saying, let's build it. Let's kind of make life easier for these crazy disruptive product founders who are launching amazing ideas. And again, it doesn't have to be a flying car or like that kind of thing, which I think is really cool, by the way. But there's people trying to launch really innovative ideas and like ed tech, even like fashion, launching like new types of clothing or kind of mimetic look, like all kinds of things, and you want to facilitate that for them. They already have too much bureaucracy and the government kind of interfering with them from a legislation standpoint. You want to make it easy on
On the growth side.
on the growth side.
Yeah. And especially I like the idea of like the rapid testing, figure out distribution, figure out if people are willing to pay versus build the whole thing and then hope and pray or not have any energy, efforts, capital left to actually go and bring it to margin properly.
Lots of times these crazy ideas, they'll just make a headline or like get a lot of clicks by themselves. Like marketing shouldn't be too complex.
These are like these like B2C products where
Yeah.
it makes sense to put it in a publication like an online newspaper, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even content like, or ads, most of the times you just have to mention what the use case is of that product. So like, in the case of like the personal luxury jet, like you can mention you could get through London or in New York in like 5 minutes or
Crazy claim.
that's just like the product speaks for itself. If you're building those kind of things, you need to push the distribution front to understand whether how you're communicating it or who you're communicating it to actually make sense.
Actually, so could you walk through an example then? Let's say someone comes into the product and they have a little bit of market pull, but not a ton. So how would they use just an example. How would they use your product to grow from, let's say, 1,000 customers to 1,000,000 customers, or let's take 1,000 customers to 10,000 customers?
Yeah.
Like 10x there.
Yeah. So essentially what you have with Lens AI is you have these two growth agents. One's a strategy agent and the other one's an execution agent. So the function of the strategy agent is to have a Q&A with you, just like a growth consultant would, and essentially find out as much as possible around your product, your KPIs, your competitors, your brand in general, all of these different cups you need to fill, and then kind of give back strategy entailing how you get users on your product. So that's essentially, you have this conversation with them. You can text it or you can do speech like on VC today, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you get this strategy, basically saying, you get from 1,000 to 10,000 users, splitting your budget for this growth channels, and essentially, like this is the overall budget. These are the timelines. You do it in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and these are the steps you need to take. What the execution agent does off the back of that very high level, very intangible strategy, which is the problem that lots of product founders have lots of times, is that they'll pay like a few thousand for a consultant, and then they give them this strategy, and then but you need to onboard with like 10-20K a month retainer with us to actually execute it. So what he does is like he splits it down into very practical, actionable tasks. You're splitting your budget on ads, on pay-per-click, but what are the actual tasks? All right, I need to figure out my target audience. I need to figure out the keywords I'm gonna use for the ad. I need to do some competitor analysis, design my landing page accordingly for my target audience, and create an app that actually converts on the specific platform I want to use. So he's basically gonna execute all of these tasks for you in a way that the user just spend tokens, execution tokens, and you'll just go off and like do the target audience research, come back with a document, and you'll go off and find out about competitors, with the same products in your niche, and it'll come back. Then we'll use that research data and produce ads, produce landing pages, and then you'll launch those landing pages to the ad platforms, come back with conversion results, and basically say, this converted worse, let's change it, or let's remove it out of our bids, and then we're going to use this and this one, and put all the money here, and maybe like keep iterating on those over the next 2 weeks or something. And we'll do that on different campaigns. So even if you're doing influencer, if part of your strategy was scaling through influencer marketing, he'll do the same with influencers. So he'll prospect the influencers. You need to basically blow up your product.
like actually like DMing them,
like content guidelines, offers, proposals, reporting back about who actually is interested, and redrafting the offers proposal until you close them and launch them as sponsored campaigns. Once they're launched, you'll basically attribute your influencers and say, this influencer is bringing the most conversions. He makes sense to keep on a retainer, or move from a sponsored post approach to a retainer, more posts per month, and remove these other ones out of the picture because they're not actually bringing attributed conversions. So it's kind of the same approach from ads standpoint and content as well. You might not be paying to make content, but you're actually paying with time, right? Because the time you spend making content that doesn't go viral, it's just like time you're losing basically that you can make on a content that could go viral. It's the same split testing, A/B testing approach on different growth channels.
Yeah, I like the high frequency testing approach that you can kind of bake into the bot, doing more experiments per day, per hour, per minute.
It's a productivity increase that matters, and like it needs to be a targeted productivity increase, like towards conversions. It can't be
Right. The ROI is not on the cost savings of staff. It's on the actual output, which is more impressions or more traffic or better conversion rate, more customers for your business.
What product founders miss, like especially startup product founders, is they launch brand awareness campaigns like a Nike and Apple would, to get loads of clicks, but they're not like bottom of funnel qualified leads like coming in. You can't afford to spend money and time like Apple does, like on these very, very wide angle campaigns, just getting whoever in. You need a very targeted conversion based approach.
Brings up an idea, because we talked about this. You talked about how one of the important things for your business will be, so you get people in on the 90% off offer, but then how do we get them to see the value in paying the full price later on down the road after you've actually launched the full product? And I think we might have touched on something there. You talked about how this is not about saving money or executing tasks. This is about increasing the actual sales dollars to your business. If you can align the user with that and they can see like the actual sales dollars driven to their business with the product, then I think you can start monetizing it instead of charging per token, but perhaps charging per outcome or some sort of performance-based marketing. That way I know like some of the top like direct-to-consumer performance-based agencies use that charging model, that engagement billing model today. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting because like if we take a Stripe, for example, right? They don't take money up front. They just take that 1.5 or 3% based on where you're located. And that's a lot easier because they're obviously a payment gateway provider. So that they kind of take it as they're at the end of the funnel. It's like once you've done all the tough, rough work of like marketing your way through it.
Yeah.
And they come in,
They help you get paid.
They help you get paid, and then you kind of, your life is easier and you have no worry paying that. With like marketing agencies, like, what I used to do in my agency is like a hybrid of like base fee and performance fee. So it's a very common approach to basically split it because, when you're working like a big brand, you want to get a slightly bigger piece of the pie because they're like multi-billion-dollar companies and
you're driving all this value creation for them.
And you're driving that value creation for them. And they're lots of times they're very against it, but to negotiate your way through that. I think that's the best way. With smaller clients, obviously you want to have lots of times like a kind of cushion, like a base fee. You don't want to be working with performance all the time because they'll almost probably, not always, that their product is very successful to market. So you kind of want to have that cushion if you're on an agency. Now with software, that's a totally different story. It's like obviously the fact that you're distributing a software product that helps people get sales for this automated marketing engine allows you to get economies of scale. and kind of get a lot more users, and basically per user you end up paying a lot less per token. So I think that there could be space for that. It's just a matter of, can you actually easily get results for these companies, and can you actually have some kind of API integration or partnership with these conversion analytics platforms like Shopify, Klaviyo, like Meta, who allows to actually make sure that you're, basically like you're getting the conversion data.
Yeah, the full
Like
picture.
the full picture and the conversion data directly inside your platform.
Okay.
Like, and you can exactly see everything from those guys in a kind of privacy protected way. So yeah, if you manage to do that, you can probably, start charging the Stripe model for like a marketing platform. But yeah, we'll see. That could be really cool.
That could be an interesting like module or something to look at as like after you launch and you're looking for like that expansion revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. This is my qualm with product management the way it is today. So, I come into these companies often as a product consultant. So I help them grow their product revenue, everything from like the activation through to retention. So I come in after marketing has acquired the user, the top of the user, top of the funnel, and I come in after that point. But when you tell a founder like, hey, pay a product manager like a growth marketer or a performance marketer, or pay a product manager like a salesperson, they're like, what the hell? And I don't understand that. Like, I think when product managers are now driving revenue and like they're responsible for increasing the usage of the product, which means how many more people, especially in these usage-based billing models like AI products, more usage equals more revenue for the product. If you're maximizing that, I think you should get a piece of that pie. Like you should get a base comp and then you should get some upside that's tied to MRR increase for the software product or ARR increase for the software product.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I don't know, it seems to me like it would depend on the stage of the company as well. Because obviously, a startup which is still growing, like in its first users, is got one channel validated, is trying to grow to more users. That it would seem like they would prioritize, acquisition rather than retention for some reason. And then, it's a scale up, which is kind of scaling up, and already has its base users, product market fit is kind of solved for. It would seem like they would value the product management position at a higher level, because it would basically mean that they can expand into further product lines and features that they can monetize through, and then eventually, multiply the value of their business like that. But yeah, it doesn't seem like an early stage startup would be. I just think that they're too much like tunnel focused on like user acquisition.
Mm-hmm. As they should be. I think so. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, because you grow the channels, you use them, you kind of exhaust them, and maybe a leading indicator of that is like your customer acquisition cost is rising because you kind of saturated that channel. And then at that point, you have these users, you want to, like you said, retain them. You also want to monetize them. So you want to grow the average revenue per user as much as possible. And I really think that's where product management comes in. I totally agree with you that earlier stage, you don't need them. Often founder-led is enough. Founder, engineering, growth marketer is how I would start a company. But yeah, like after, let's say you're post-seed, you're doing like $1 million in revenue, somewhere $1 million, 2, 3 million in revenue, and you want to grow to 5, 10, 15 million in revenue, then I think it makes sense to try and also bring in someone to monetize those users. And I think those people should be paid like salespeople because they're essentially driving more revenue per user. There's a direct tie to revenue outcomes.
Yeah.
They just don't do it for some reason.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm here for like championing that change essentially.
Yeah. No, I think, it's just different growth stages. You're solving different problems, and that's it needs to be, it's the ownership of the CEO, right? To kind of understand and be aware enough to kind of see where you need, like in which phase you need to solve which problem, and bring in the right people to do that. And I think, yeah, it's just how it should be. Product management is key. Yeah, and you could also like mention it, growth on the acquisition and side, but also on like potentially like the product development side.
Sure. Like the activation and retention side. We were talking earlier about how you're using these agents to both do the strategy and the execution piece, and how the big thing is that it can run like multiple experiments per day. Where do you see humans fitting in here, and like how do you address all the marketers out there that are like, my job. So like, let's talk about that because it's real, and I think it's interesting.
It's a big taboo topic right now. So like, you know, the two main points I want to make on this is like, if you're a product artist, especially, and you're finding yourself with these AI agent companies like saying, we'll do this, and that, you have to make sure you understand what it is that they can automate. Because in our perspective, what I tell marketers is, look, if you're specialized in doing ads, right? From today, you can access a platform, a tool that can amplify your productivity by 6. Because now you're not only doing pay-per-click for your agency, consultant business, you'll be doing pay-per-click, SEO, influencer, community content, like all at once, because you can run all of those campaigns on the back end through this new tech infrastructure, which is getting introduced into the market. So it's like automatically your service becomes like a 6x in terms of pricing that you can charge your customer. Or even if you're a marketing pro who's working at a company, in the eyes of the employer, you'll be 6x the productivity, and you'll get chosen over a guy. He's not using these AI tools. So that's the first point I want to make, which is super crucial, is like, you're not going to get replaced. It's simply the value perception that employers or clients are going to have of you completely shifts. So that's like a big point. The second one is you always want to keep the human in the loop. So like, I think these AI agent platforms, including Lance AI, are very much thinking of how do we keep the human in the loop, because ultimately he is our customer. If you're in B2B, like you're not, especially you're helping businesses get conversions like we're doing, you're never gonna neglect the business you're helping. It's just like you want to make sure that they're in control of the outputs that the agents produce of the results, and like attributing actions to results. You want to make sure they're in the loop of that. So you want to think of it, at least how we think of it, as like a 90-10 approach, where the 90% of manual execution work is the AI, but that 10% still remains in the hands of the human. And that 10% is usually, in our case, spending tokens to get actions done on the AI agents front, then reviewing the actions, the outputs of those actions, and then ultimately approving them, and then kind of going back in that circle where you spend tokens, you review the task, and then you approve it. That for us is like 10% human in the loop approach, is like encapsulated in basically like always being in the loop with what's happening with your business, whether that's marketing or whether that's product development. You need to have a global overview of what the agent is doing, but without having the legacy software approach where you're doing like 50, 60, 70% of manual work on that software and like going crazy because you're spending like 1 billion hours per day, trying to basically like juggle these software tools and trying to watch YouTube videos to understand how to use them or hire consultants. It's just a crazy game. Like, I don't think it needs to be played anymore.
Yeah, especially since like I guess like those classic old school software tools, the human is like changing how they work to fit the way the software is prescribing, versus like just talking like naturally, like how we do with ChatGPT voice, etc. Like way better modality to use. So yeah, I totally
This is a
agree.
Tony Stark approach, right? This is being able to have your workflow desk and kind of speak to the AI and basically check up on what he's doing like any moment, but
Yeah,
never kind of you digging down kind of
exactly.
in your bunker, like, trying to I don't know, scrape your way through growth for product.
I also like I couldn't agree more about the review part, which I think is like the key human part. Like that whole you need the human to use their discernment, their judgment to review and say like, does this actually fit with what we want to or not? Like I can give a quick example personally. As I was spinning up our Focus Bet Studio website, using Lovable, I built a version of it. It took me all of like 5 minutes, which was great. But the first thing I actually did was I had our designer, Jalan, review it and tell me like, does this make sense? Like, and he actually changed some things which made it a whole lot better. And when I showed it to people, like they got it right away.
Absolutely.
And it's that like people with these expertise, like you hone your expertise through this lived experience, which marketers have, product managers have, designers have. They ultimately need to be the reviewer of what the AI produces and actually say, is this good, is it bad, make these tweaks.
Yeah, it seems like, it's other than the creative strategy part, you're having this like creative, like end product supervision part. Like you're kind of like reviewing this task output and kind of basically like off the back of the previous task output, you're setting up the strategy for the new task
Yeah.
in that sense. So it's like an iterative process where ultimately I think you shouldn't be prompting, because if Nike in the future is like they've run so many campaigns, they should know what they've been doing. That should feed enough data, enough context to the agent to then basically like produce new campaigns and like basically feed itself off the back of that real time iterative data. So you shouldn't be like prompting it every time in that sense, but it should be more of like a autonomous learning approach for the agent. Obviously, now that these new models like Grok 4 and stuff, they're coming up with like, they're getting really close to like reasoning,
Okay.
that they can actually think, in the sense that they can, start figuring out information instead of like scraping the web to kind of find in a very associated way, like what other people have said, that they can actually get close to processing. All right, from first principles and saying, all right, this might actually like be true. This might actually be how you build things from the way up, and that's where agents become a lot more valuable.
So we're saying like these bigger companies, it'll be more like 95 and 5 perhaps. And the smaller earlier stage startups will be, I don't know, like you get 90-10 or 80-20 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. How much data you have then dictates how much the AI can do versus a human having to be in the loop.
Yeah, the data is essential. At the same time, that this reasoning side is like making sure that the computing of these models is way better. Can actually like compute this data from like a first principles approach, instead of taking what the experts said like 10 years ago, which for example in product or marketing that might be completely irrelevant because there's such fast paced fields, and things change, like algorithms, like especially on Meta, like Google, they change in like minutes, seconds. They keep making algorithm updates. So what was working yesterday from an ads standpoint, content standpoint, influencer marketing standpoint, whatever it is, it doesn't work today. And again, user psychology on the product front, it moves pretty much at the same pace with like these hundreds of models being drafted every week and like changing the product landscape, you know. So
Yeah, AI products are interesting that way. Yeah, especially in the B2C space versus B2B, because you have a little bit more of these entrenched processes where you have like buying cycles and these decision-making processes around adopting products and then getting adoption inside your company. And so B2B is a bit slower, but yes, B2C, I totally agree.
100%.
Yeah.
The other thing is like the question really we brought down around, I validated my initial growth channels. They're very, predictable users on my products. Now what do I do?
Typically founders, they come to me like when their CAC is rising, and one of the ways we address this is by trying to increase the average revenue per user. So we look at your existing user base and we see how can we drive more revenue per user by offering more value, by understanding customers better and seeing other ways they can use the product and increase usage of the product and get more value from it. And the second way is adding a second product revenue line. So how can we create an entirely new value proposition that's maybe adjacent to what we're solving for the existing users? And this could then involve new pricing and packaging, and it could lead to, for example, like a second pricing tier available for your product. And then the third way, once you've exhausted those two channels, is then looking at, okay, we want to move into new markets. This could be like new geos. Like, for example, I'm from Canada, so a lot of Canadian startups will go from Toronto and then move into the US market after. The alternative way is then moving up or down market. So typically in B2B SaaS, like you'll start with finding, well, where can you easily find customers? And so that means approaching probably smaller companies initially as your customers. Once you get in there and you land and expand and you prove value, then typically you want to start sourcing bigger accounts, so bigger customers, and moving up market.
Enterprise.
So enterprise, exactly. And then so that's where you go in, and you would then naturally need to create new product revenue lines to serve those needs.
Makes sense. No, it's it's one of those things where like I think product founders always get there later than they should, because you're so head down on acquisition. How do I get more customers? That once you hit this wall, it's kind of you're already chasing time actually get your product straight and like actually make something that can expand to new markets or like these new product lines that can bring in extra revenue. Super important to act on it, like or to have some idea of like how you would do it, like even before you're kind of scaling these acquisition challenges if possible. So lots of times it's hard because things move so quick. But
I think that's where like these focus bets come into place, or validation sprints. Actually, I saw the other day that like OpenAI was just hiring a team, but they called it like they were hiring like 3 or 4 roles for product, marketing, design, and engineering for um, their focus bets teams. Essentially, like so OpenAI is looking at new industries and new value propositions that they feel that they can generate a lot of revenue for all. So they'll hire a little SWAT team to come in and spec it out and figure out what to take to market. So I see that, and that kind of answers the point you were bringing up, which is before exhausting that initial growth channel, you need to, like founders essentially, they need to have a good narrative around how they go into the next round and say like, look, we grew from this to here. That's what got us here. And now we need to find a new growth story, a new value proposition, or a new market that's going to unlock our next level of growth. And then they can go and raise off the back of that. But obviously, like, your investors are not going to be like, oh, great story and great deck. Like, sure. No, like you need actual, like credible proof evidence. So that's where like these validation sprints come in. So I think this is like a good dovetail between product and marketing. It's like spitting up quick landing pages and distribution tests and customer interviewing, all these different things to essentially figure out like, what should we build next? Why? How much money can we make from it? And then roughly, what does that look like? If we actually choose to do this, what would be the ROI on it? How much could we make in revenue? And then how complicated is it to build this and distribute this thing?
yeah, I think I heard the Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky like say after like COVID, which is where they had like big hit because the hospitality industry was closed. He basically decided to like revolutionize his product marketing and like product management team like into one. You combine them in a way that you could run these very fast experiments without having this like kind of elongated feedback loop between the two, where you kind of, all right, I'll build the product, and then when I think the product is perfect, I'll pass it on to marketing, and then they kind of figure out whether it's worth distributing or not. You want to close that feedback loop as much as possible, which is essentially why early stage startups are able to grow so quickly, is because you probably have the growth founder like on one side of the chair, and then the product founder on the other side of the chair, and then speaking to each other in real time. And you want to kind of maintain that when you're a scale up, and not lose it out in these like extra hires and extra bureaucratic structures, where feedback loop is so elongated and like takes a long time to get from one side of company to the other, essentially.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like you said before, like these focus SWAT teams that come in and rapidly do this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're looking at it from all angles, all sides. And yeah, I think if you build out, you enable these teams to run fast, and then you get out of the way, and then you see the kind of magic they can create. I mean, it's the same type of thinking behind corporates and innovation arms. Like, so for example, my work with Deloitte Ventures, we went in and we built up a new audit product that scaled it to about 8 million in revenue, and then we spun it inside Deloitte afterward, and then it became the largest rollout at the company. And the reason we were able to move quickly is because we literally sat in a different office. Like the Deloitte HQ was in downtown Toronto, and then we sat in this different building that was like hipster, and it had like high ceilings and coffee and pool tables and ping pong tables, and like it was just like a completely different office and environment. And there was just like 10 of us inside there, and we just had this one core mission of like, okay, how can we leverage Deloitte's distribution and their existing tech stack and what they're good at, and how can we kind of disrupt audit and financials, accounting, so that their competitors and other tech players in the market don't out-disrupt us and move into our industry first.
Yeah.
And so this was like the big bet that the audit firm partners were betting on. What's the next 10 years of growth going to look like? And so they essentially pumped a bunch of money into like AI technology, and that's how we spun out this audit solution that essentially helped, kind of like how you're helping AI for product marketers. This was like AI for accountants, and don't review a bunch of invoices manually, but just feed it into a system. It'll automatically check the balancers, make sure everything checks, and then lead your strategy based on that. And so that's what we're able to do. So yeah, definitely.
100%. Yeah. Curious, like, how'd you get into basically doing what you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, the way I started is my career has kind of gone like this a bit, but I've been a product manager for several years, and then a SaaS founder myself. And I kind of saw like what worked really well for us and some big mistakes that we had made, especially around building product before getting distribution, like we kind of talked about before. So during that process of building, I got approached by several other startups and founders needing help with quickly validating new product ideas before taking them to market. And then once they're in market, that, better monetizing their existing customer base. And so I found that this was something that I could do really well. And I'd done with several startups like Deloitte Ventures, as well as a couple of other startups that have gone to Series A and beyond. And so I found like really that this was just like my passion point, and I wanted to work with like brilliant founders who are super passionate about what they're building, and really help them unlock that passion by making sure that they don't kind of fall off a cliff after raising their first round.
I guess, is there like a specific insight which you had early on in your career which led you to like want to do this, like that motivated you to help these founders specifically?
I guess, well, the insight came to me more from maybe from market pull, that I had a lot of founders coming in talking to me and saying, look, we have product market fit and we have a basic product here that's working, but we don't know how to get more revenue from our product, and our customer acquisition costs are growing. And so how can we quickly figure this out? But I don't want to burn like 50K a month on hiring a new team to build out a new product before I know that there's actually legs to it. And unlike when I first started the company, now I need to deal with investors and sales and team hiring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have all day to like sit in the lab, talk to customers, and really go as deep as I want to be going. So I need someone else to come and help me do that. And, I only trust this to other founders who have done this kind of journey before. And so that's where it made sense to work together.
That's pretty cool. A pretty cool way to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, is there something around product management that kind of lit you up when you first heard of it?
It's crazy because, so if you come to my family dinners and you see my dad, me, and my uncle sitting there around the table, literally on a Friday night with like a bottle of whiskey, what we'll do is we'll just talk about business ideas, go to market, and monetization. We don't think of it that way. I don't know if it's like an Indian slash Guju or Gujarati background thing, but people love to talk about like what businesses they're launching and customer insight, like why they're able to sell the product, why people buy. And we would do that with every type of random business, from like real estate to like consumer products and goods. Like my family, we had a textile manufacturing business in Zimbabwe. So we would make like jeans and like t-shirts. And actually, one thing, as like a 7-year-old, my aunt had bought these. So as a 7-year-old, I'd actually helped my dad grow his business, like grow another $1 million into his business. And it was like, my aunt had bought these jeans for me. They were like cargo pants, actually, orange ones from New York, and she brought them to Zimbabwe. And I was like, Dad, you need to make these in your factory. And he's like, there's no way. This is weird. I'm like, no, trust me, all the kids will love it. And he somehow listened to me. He launched the thing, and actually he sold the shit out of it. And that money was actually what allowed us to move from Zimbabwe to Canada, because we used that money to like buy our tickets. And there was a problem getting cash out from the country at that time. So he had to essentially like take that cash out of the business, not through the official channels, and actually use it to buy our plane tickets to get out of the country. And so, like, coming back to like why I love product management, I guess I never knew it was called product management until I did it. But I just love the idea of like coming up with new product ideas, seeing how to market them and monetize them, and then actually like putting them out there and quickly seeing what works without, pouring all your millions of dollars and burning half your company doing it. So that's kind of like why I got into
That's
it.
some crazy come up story.
That was my guest, Tom, the CEO of Lens AI. I really enjoyed our conversation, learning about new ways to hack growth and distribution, and also applying things and concepts learned from shoe drops to the world of tech. Once again, my name is Hirsch. I'm the founder of Focus Bet Studios, and thanks for tuning in to this week's podcast. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one.